pleased to be here. I also would like to thank the individuals who took the tour yesterday. I think it was very informative, and we had a tour during the day, we had one in the evening, we had a real good discussion session after the evening tour. So I think anytime that we can provide any kind of communication, I think that's a very positive thing. I also want to thank all the people who called, who had questions, concerns, and we had discussions and talked. I learned certain things, other issues I think were brought to my attention, which I think were very good, gave me a chance to process the information. And most of all, I want to thank our board members who have been with us since the beginning, and come to most of the meetings. In this school, or in NCCS, I think we're very fortunate to have board members that want to actively get involved on committees. I do understand that when you do have 3 board members on a committee and a decision is to be made, that it might create a conflict, not a conflict of interest per se, but it puts them in a difficult situation. However, we need to know that the board members, when they came on this committee, came on not to be decision makers, but to gather information. And when the committee is going to make their decisions, the board members will not be involved in that, as they have, expressed to me, and because they, in essence, will be sitting and making the final decision when it comes to selecting the options. But I do want to thank them for the time, the interest, and everything that they have expressed. It doesn't matter what committee, if you look here at NCCS, you find that you have a board member that is more than willing to work on those committees to provide the best for all our children. And we all know that that's volunteer time, so I think they deserve to be commended. The other thing that I do want to correct is, there's always going to be news articles because people are going to try to gather information, and every once in a while there might be some information that may be reported that may not be quite correct. And I guess the option, the thing to do is to try to correct that. In one of the articles on the North Countryman, it says the Facilities Committee was appointed by the NCCS School Board. They were not appointed by the NCCS School Board. The committee, there was a request put out through a district newsletter, through a couple articles in the paper. We had some volunteers. We took all the volunteers that we had. We didn't really have as many as we thought. There were some individuals in the community who I was given the names that would be very good representatives to be on that committee. I contacted those individuals individually and asked them to serve, and they have volunteered to serve when they were contacted. Some were actually submitted. Anyone that submitted, we accepted their application. So it was not an appointment by the school board as to the committee members. The format for tonight's meeting, and the other thing, in today's paper, I know Shan talked to me yesterday, and basically the presentation will be made on the September 5th meeting. What I said, and maybe it was misinterpreted, is that the committee will not be making their selection in September. But we have plans so that the board will be able to receive the same information that you're going to get here tonight. I talked to Randy, and he'll be coming back on the 5th, and we'll be talking about how we're going to present this towards the end of our meeting. And that presentation will be made on September 5th, which is next Tuesday, at a board meeting. And since there seems to be such a large interest, we'll probably be holding the board meeting in here instead of having it in our library. The format for tonight's meeting is I want to go over some information that has been requested by the committee. I will be handing out information, going over it. Then I'm going to turn it over to Randy, who will make the presentation. Remember, he is going to come back tonight to us with the different options, and one of the options, based upon the conversations that took place, was to include the reopening of Champlain. He will be discussing these options, and the other thing that we had talked about at the last meeting was that Randy would be coming back with some figures that we have to look at. The committee needs to look at cost figures, percentage figures based on the increase in the cost, and also the other factor that we looked at was the enrollment.
So we'll be presenting that information. It'll go to Randy. Then we'll talk about how we're going to do our present, the time that we're going to meet, maybe an hour or so before, to figure out how we're going to present this to the board. And then we're going to end the facilities committee meeting. But then after that meeting is ended, there will be an opportunity to discuss, to ask questions, or whatever. Randy, I've talked to, has willingly said that he would stay. I talked to Bill Knaus, our business manager. He will stay to try to provide information. And I will be more than happy to stay as long as you want, so I can try to field any questions. I may not have the answers, but I will take the questions, and then I will try to provide you with the answers. So that's the format for tonight's meeting. What I want to start with the information that the board has requested. One of the things was the update on the Rouse's Point School. I don't know if many of you know it or not, but we have been in the process of removing some mold in the art room. And what I wanted to report is that we had an emergency board meeting on August 29th at 6:30 in the morning, because we try to catch the board members before they go to work. Some we have to get up. And we were able to approve the removal project, which was by Serco, was for the water intrusion response and remediation plan, which is phase 1 of the Rouse's Point Elementary School. And the proposed cost for the project was $8,850. It was approved by the school board. And I'm reading that off the board minutes. So, or I should say the board agenda. Then the other information that people have been asking for a long time, called information, misinformation, or whatever. I tried to work it up so that the committee would have this information. I'm going to ask Roy, would you pass this out? This is and now I'm talking to the committee here, this is the savings by closing Champlain Elementary School. This has been coming out almost every time that I talk to someone. I keep hearing that you were promised X number of dollars for whatever reason. What I did is I went back, worked with the deputy treasurer. We went back, we looked at the notes to try to come up with what were the actual savings when that school was closed. I really want to put this to rest, because all I can do is I can report to you what the savings were. Instructional savings based upon the total for salary, for Social Security, for retirement, for estimated health insurance. The total there was $300,848. You were looking at saving a kindergarten teacher, a second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, the library media specialist, a fifth of art, and a fifth of PE. In addition to that, you had non-instructional positions that were reduced. One was a custodial position, the other was a typist. You had an LPN that was there for 10 hours on a weekly basis. And that savings was $79,487. So that brings it up to $380,315. Total other savings estimated as of at that time, you had the T1 line for $6,852. Lease and maintenance of copier, which would have been $2,317. Operation and maintenance contractual, operation and maintenance materials and supplies. These are items that you normally would find on a budget. Operations maintenance of fuel oil. The fuel oil was $4,228. The maintenance of materials and supply was $5,000. The operation and maintenance contractual was $2,000. Operation and maintenance electricity was $6,363. Operation and maintenance telephone was $200. The estimated total other savings, putting all those together, was $26,965. So the estimated total savings over the 2002-2003 expenditures when you close Champlain was $407,280. And that's about as close a figure as I can come to going back and looking through the records. As to why the other numbers were projected, I don't know. But all I can do is I can give you the accurate information based upon what I was able to get. The Other thing that was asked was regards to transportation. We were finally able to conclude with our transportation. I have a transportation analysis that we need to pass out. And in order to look at that analysis, this is the trip analysis that will help us to understand that. And we have a trip analysis as it exists now in 2005, 2006. I have the trip analysis that was requested that shows the Champlain scenario, should everybody have to come here. And I also have the trip analysis that was requested that shows the Moores scenario, should everyone happen to go to Moores. I'll let you pass that out. As I look at this analysis, and what I did is I took a look at the figure, but first of all, to explain how this is broken down, we have all the different bus runs. We have the number of the bus, we have the start time, we have the finish time, we have the total time, we have the distance, we have the number of students being transported, the maximum number of students on a bus, the capacity, percent capacity that is filled, and the trip cost. Now the way we determine the trip cost is we took, I'm just doing this right now to show, so you will have a chance to look at this over the next couple of days, and it'll show you. When I did my analysis, I did not consider the BOCES runs because those runs would happen no matter what. But looking at it, if you look at the cost per run, our present cost for one run right now, and the way we calculated that, just to make sure everybody understands, is we took the total expense of transportation for the year of 2005, 2006, it was $1,288,183.92. And then we divided it by the total miles that we put on during the year, which was 499,743 miles. So with that, we came out to approximately a cost of $2.57. It comes out 577, so I rounded it off to $2.58 a mile. So, in addition to that, so if you look at the cost per run for the present, what we're actually doing right now, it costs us $2,111.09 for one run. For the Champlain scenario, that is, if we were to bring everybody back here, which is information the committee wanted to have, it would cost $1,641.59 for one run. And for the Moores scenario, if everybody was to go to Moores, it would cost $2,093.85. Now the cost per day, because if you have a run in the morning and then I multiplied that by 2, so the present is $4,222.18. Champlain scenario would be $3,283.18. Moore scenario, $4,187.70. And then for the cost per year, we have 180 school days. I multiplied the whole thing by 180, and I came out to $759,992.40. And the Champlain scenario, $590,972.40. The Moore scenario is $753,786. So if you were looking at savings for Champlain from the present, if we were looking at the $759,992.40, and we were to look at what it would be if we went to Champlain, we would be saving approximately $169,020. If we were to look at going to Moores, from what we do now, we'd be saving approximately $162,813. Okay? But if you look at just the idea of going from Moores to what we are right now, it's only a savings of $6,206 a year. The other information that people wanted to look at is how long do students have to be on the bus? Presently, the longest run that we have in the trip analysis is 1 hour and 17 minutes. We're not counting the BOCES runs, again, because the BOCES runs go all the way to Plattsburgh, and sometimes they have various stops. But in our normal bus runs, would be 1 hour and 17 minutes. If you were looking at the Champlain scenario, you'd be looking at 1 hour and 9 minutes. If you're looking at the Moores scenario, you're looking at 1 hour and 12 minutes. The number of runs that we currently have are 29. If we would look at the Champlain scenario, we can do it in 27 run, which would save us 2 runs. If you look at Moores, you would add that on 3 brand new runs. So that's the information in regards to transportation. I know there's a lot here because you may want to take a look at the individual runs, but we did the trip analysis because this was the information that I think the committee really wanted to have as to what is it going to cost per mile to transport kids, how many miles are we going, and what would the differences be. So that's the one bit of information I want to share. The other bit of information,
This is subsidized by the state.
90%.
90% of these costs.
Right, transportation.
It's a little misleading to say $590,000.
Well, no, but I'm just saying what the figure is using that for a mile, but then you still put it in, you get 90%, you get your rate back the following year. So, right. Yeah, the savings is quite a bit, there's no question. But if we were looking at the figures themselves, that's what we wanted to do. The next thing that I have, I will go get it. I have the enrollment projections that I want to give everybody a copy of. I think I forgot one. Would you give on my page? Yeah, I'm giving that on the side. Just to give you a quick synopsis, we did get the brand new enrollment projections, and what the enrollment projections are indicating is that we are going to be, in the next 5 years, we're going to be looking at 11.2% decline in enrollment. I do have the, I'm sorry, I thought I had one in my packet, but I guess I left it on my desk, so I'll get it for you. But you'll have a chance to take a look at it. This is the study that we had done by Costello and Silke. They just came in this week, and basically what he does, he looks at the birth rates, and he gives the explanation of everything that's there, and he gives you a projection looking at each of the different years. With that information, one of the questions that was being asked by the committee was, what savings could we look at in the future if we were to go to one site? Well, I use those enrollment projections, so I'll share this with you. What I did is I went to look at the enrollment that we would have in our elementary in the year 2009, 2010. Because I think when we talked and we said if we were going to go through a project, we would be able to, that would be the first year. The first year in Moores, the enrollment, according to this enrollment projection, would be 335. And in Rouse's Point would be 249. If you stay with a 2-deep school, in Rouse's Point, you would have 12 faculty. We're talking just classroom teachers now. If you go to Moores and stay with a 3-deep, you would have 18. Now, looking at it as a combined scenario, and you're looking at the classroom teachers, if you put the numbers together and you're all in the same location, for K, you could go down to 4 sections. For first grade, you could go down to 4 sections. For second grade, you would still stay at 5 because that's a high enrollment number. Third grade would be 4, fourth grade would be 4, fifth grade would be 4. So you'd be looking at 5 teachers less with a combined scenario in that particular year. Now that doesn't mean that our enrollment can't change because there's a lot of things that can happen around this, but if you were looking at the information, and that's what you wanted me to do, look at the information as it would exist then, you would be looking at, in teachers' salaries, approximately $203,190, and with their benefits, another $97,038, that's insurance, Social Security, and teachers' retirement system. So in staffing, you'd be looking at $300,228. Now, the other item that I mentioned last time that I could bring forth, that has nothing to do with enrollment, is that we have teachers that travel between buildings back and forth. With the itinerant travel, that's about $7,000 a year in mileage that we pay. The administrators I looked at, because I know that that was a big issue. You would still have a student population that would be too high to drop down to one administrator. I called all the other schools in the area, and I asked them basically, how many students do you have per administration? And what they were telling me is between 350 and 400. So I do not think that it would be a wise move to drop down to one administrator at this time. However, if the enrollment goes down in the future or whatever, that would be something that would have to be determined. So looking at that, with the teachers, with the traveling, and the transportation, and again, we know it's aided, but you still have to put it into the budget for that year, you'd be looking at $476,000. That's basically what you would look at as a year's savings. So, with that being said, until I get the enrollment projections, which I will hand out, make sure. I also want to mention that Melissa did bring a handout that you have there for you. I think everyone has a copy that you can take and read. If you don't have one, you can pick one up. I have extra copies here. Randy, I'm going to turn it over to you now, and you can...
Thank you, Bob. Okay. We put together a PowerPoint this evening so that it's easier to see. And sorry, but if you don't mind turning around for those I'd like to talk about, just to review again, goals and objectives that this committee discussed 2 meetings ago, and we discussed them in last meeting. We have 5 design options to share this evening, and we're going to go one option at a time and kind of one building at a time. And the other thing we have is preliminary scopes of work for renovation work at each of the schools, and cost estimates for that work. And the last slide is a cost comparison for each of the 4 options, or 5 options, both from a total cost standpoint as well as the aidability. Okay? I wanted to direct your attention to the handouts that I gave you. Some of that's a lot of detailed cost information that's summarized in these slides. And we're going to be covering some of that along with the options. Okay. First, these were the goals that we had discussed at the last time. That whichever options we go with, we're going to try to meet these goals and objectives. One is that the educational program needs drive any design solutions. The grade configuration is perhaps the most important under educational program. The current grade configuration is K-5 for elementary, 6-8 middle school, and 9-12 high school. And we're looking at keeping that same configuration. We're looking at meeting minimum room size requirements wherever possible. The second piece is maximizing building aid, and we'll talk in detail about the various options, and by doing that, we minimize the tax impact. The next one was staying within the debt limit. Again, we talked about this last time. The current debt limit of the district is $29 million when you take into consideration the debt that is already incurred. So you could spend up to $29 million with a capital project and stay within the debt limit. You're looking to address health, safety, and building code issues in each of the buildings. That includes accessibility, moving students out of basements at the Moores and Rouse's Point elementary schools, and in the case of the Champlain option, we also looked at doing the same there, moving classrooms out of the basement spaces. That in itself will also help with air quality, but we're looking at providing ventilation also in classrooms where there currently isn't. For example, each of the 3 elementary schools back in the 70s, when the windows were replaced, they also closed off the vents to the classrooms. And that was pretty common in the 70s during the energy crisis. But in so doing, we took away the ability to mechanically ventilate a couple of the classrooms. So one of the reasons why the air seems kind of stale when you walk in, especially in the basements, there is no mechanical ventilation. So to improve air quality and meet code requirements, we're looking to provide ventilation into those spaces. And then there's updates to building systems that are going to be required, and I'll talk in detail about that in a minute. Reduce operational costs, if possible, that's a goal. Increase energy efficiency and sustainability. We're looking at the possibility of a fuel change here at this site from oil to gas. And we're also looking when we replace roofs and windows and exterior envelope type systems to increase the amount of insulation and increase the energy efficiency by so doing. And then the last piece was, the last goal was to increase storage space. And we learned more since the last time we met because we spent a day here with Jim and walked through each of the schools again. And one of the things that we found, for example, in this school was that there's a couple of classrooms and a corridor and spaces that could be used for teaching space that are just being used for storage because there's no additional space for storage. So in several of the options that we're talking about, we got the idea that why not, if we were going to be moving the kids out of the basements of the elementary schools, instead of storing everything here and as you run out, taking it down to the elementary schools, use a portion of the basements in each of the elementary schools for storage. And once a year, bring all the supplies that are needed there. And when you purchase them as part of your annual budget. And it saves cost moving things to and from this school. And saves space here. And it's free space there because we wouldn't be using the basements as classroom space. And then there was another goal that was added by someone on this committee the last time, and that was kind of defining the district, identifying which buildings, should remain open or reopen, and that leads us to looking at the options. Option 1, as we discussed last time, is to do the renovations to the middle school and high school here, which houses grades 6 through 12. Do renovations and a small addition to Moore's. That's a 3-classroom addition to create classrooms so that we can vacate the basement classrooms. That would be for grades K through 5, and it would be a 3 deep school. As I mentioned, 3 deep means 3 class rooms per each grade level. So there would be a total of 18 regular classrooms in a 3 deep school. And then renovations and an addition to Rouse's Point, again for grades K through 5, in this case it would be a 2 deep school, or a total of 12 regular classrooms. Before we get into this, I'd like to just call your attention now to this handout, which is titled the Northeastern Clinton's Central School District Additions and Alterations at the Rouse's Point Elementary School. This is a list of items that were included in the building condition survey and a couple of others that we found while walking through last week that we feel are important to consider in any renovation project. It doesn't mean you have to do all of them, but it's all of the ones that we've found. And we've listed them under 3 categories. First category is health and safety, the second is infrastructure, third is programmatic needs. So under health and safety at Rouse's Point Elementary, there's carpeting that requires replacement. As I mentioned, we need to provide handicap accessibility, and what that includes is an elevator, making entrance, at least one entrance accessible, and making bathrooms accessible on each floor level. We're looking at providing heating and ventilation system upgrades. That is an electric building, all electric, as you know, because you have inexpensive electric rates. I believe it's 4 cents per kilowatt hour versus 11 cents elsewhere in the district. So we think it makes sense to continue with an electric system. This number includes going to a hydronic system, which is a water system right now. It's an air system. We could do it less expensively if we went to an air system or stayed with an electric air system. But there are some efficiencies in going to a hydronic system. The main thing is that this provides ventilation into each of the classrooms and each of the occupied spaces, which we don't have now. You'll find in all of the schools we're looking at upgrading the emergency lighting, fire alarm systems, and as you go down further, also telephone and clock systems. So that takes care of health and safety. Under infrastructure, the roof requires replacement there. There are some masonry repairs, but not a lot. I would say that of all of the buildings, Rouse's Point is probably in the best shape in terms of its exterior masonry. Where it does need work is in the top. There's 2 string courses of stone that go around just under the parapet wall and again down by the just above the first floor level. And there's also stone sills on the windows, and those have vertical joints that need to be raked out and tuck pointed. The brick joints, for the most part, are in pretty good shape, and the brick itself is in pretty good shape. There's entry doors. I think there's 6 pair of entry doors that require replacement. I mentioned the telephone and clock system. Those, while they're under infrastructure, could also be considered, at least the telephone one could be considered a safety issue. Classroom lighting. In most classrooms, you have pennant-mounted older fixtures, and we think that you should seriously consider changing the lighting. It's a quick payback in terms of cost, and also while you're doing it, put in occupancy sensors. And that's an energy code requirement, so that when the classroom isn't occupied, the lights automatically turn off. So if somebody forgets to turn them off, they go off on their own. Any new construction that we do, those are required to be done. And again, it's a relatively quick payback. We need to put in new foundation drains, or actually install foundation drains around the perimeter of that. That's the same for Champlain. But one of the problems that you're having right now at Rouse's Point is with mold. And we think the reason is because there's water getting into the basement. And we think we can get rid of that water if we excavate down, put in foundation drains. And once we have the foundation walls open, take a look at providing waterproofing on that exterior surface as well. The windows, while they appear to be new, were actually replaced, and I don't know if Jim is here to confirm this, but we believe in the 70s, along with the energy project, at the same time when the vents were closed off. So they're about 30 years old right now, maybe a little more than 30 years old, if they were early 70s. And the technology in Windows has come a long way. There's much better windows and windows that are more energy efficient, low E glass, and again, something that you should consider. I wouldn't say that's the #1 priority, but I think that it's something that should be considered. The plumbing and hot water piping is galvanized and has been an ongoing problem, and this again is a common problem in older schools. And the water heater also requires replacement. Okay, those were infrastructure. Then program needs really include renovations and new construction. And if we look at the plan, I think Ron, I'm just going to go ahead. If we look at the plan, the yellow is the existing building. And this is the first floor, this is the second floor, and on On the second floor, these are now classrooms, and we're suggesting that those classrooms be renovated into a library. So one of the items on here is renovating this space into a library. The other piece is the existing offices are now on the first floor level, and the first floor level is up about a half a story out grade. So as you recall, when we talked about this addition the last time, this would be a new main entrance, and the main office would be located next to that main entrance along with the nurse. So the main office would then convert to a classroom on the first floor level, and hence the renovation work required there. And then the new construction consists of 5 new classrooms, a cafeteria, and then a ramped corridor so that you could get handicap accessibility at the new entrance here, ramp up to the existing level, and then either one side or the other of the stage, we would put in an elevator that would come up to the second floor corridor. So the elevator would be 3 stops, the first existing first floor level, the stage level, and then the second floor level. And basement, thank you, 4 stops. Okay. At Moore's, we'll cover the Moore's rehab, and we won't have to go over it when we get into every option. That's the next page. Under health and safety, again, there's some carpeting that we would suggest replacing. And by the way, I think that one of the things that the board needs to really think about is a kind of a policy on carpeting. And right now, there's carpeting in a lot of the classrooms and corridors. I think that it's probably a given that we'll take carpet out of the corridors and use a harder surface, probably a VCT vinyl tile. In the classrooms, we could go either way, but we may recommend going to a harder surface in the classrooms for those areas that need to be replaced. But there's a trade-off. It's a little harder to maintain the vinyl floor like this because the chairs, scrape across it and become scuff marks. The carpet, on the other hand, does usually wear out quicker, and it can attract other dusts, particles, and so on and so forth that contribute to poor air quality. So there may be some compromises there. For example, we have often for primary grade classrooms, like kindergartens in first and second grade, you might use a tile floor like this, but have a carpet that can be rolled up and laundered and brought back in a portion of the classroom. And then for the intermediate elementary students, just go with the vinyl tile. Again, it's a board policy. The cost between carpet and vinyl tile is relatively close to the same, so it's more of a policy issue. I was looking at Champlain, and I meant to be looking at Moore's. Is everybody on the Moore's sheet now? Okay. So the carpeting at Moore's was in the second floor corridor, because most of the carpet at Moore's is only 2 years old. But in the corridor itself, we're saying take that out, put a hard surface, and then also replace the carpeting in the stepped part of the auditorium. Moore's also requires a substantial amount of heating and ventilation work, emergency lighting, accessibility to the stage area. And in that case, there already is an elevator in the building, so it would require just an individual lift. It could be a portable lift, or it could be built in. There is a place actually where it would be relatively easy to build in a lift. And then a new fire alarm system. Under infrastructure, the roof at Moore's, while it's not leaking as bad as the roof at Rouse's Point, it's the same age. And in fact, we had a roof replacement project back in the early 80s that replaced the middle school roof here and the 3 elementary school roofs. It's beyond the bond is completed. We're looking at over 20-year-old roof that really should be replaced as part of any capital project. The masonry, the exterior masonry at Moore's, as I think is pretty common knowledge, requires a substantial amount of work. Your own people, your own maintenance staff did kind of a Band-Aid, but it was a necessary Band-Aid, I believe it was last summer, by installing caulk in all of the joints that were cracked. And there's both cracks through the brick, there's open masonry joints in the stone and brick. So there is a substantial amount of money there, but I think necessary in order to maintain that building. That includes a partial rebuilding of some of the parapet wall as well. And the next piece related to the exterior is the front entrance stairs. Have been repaired several times. It's time that they get torn out and replaced once and for all. New telephone clock system, again some classroom lighting. And I have windows down here for this, again they're the same vintage as the windows in the other two elementary schools, approximately in the early to mid 1970s. And then plumbing and hot water piping and the hot water system. Right now the hot water system is a large storage tank, a large capacity, and it supplies one temperature of water. Modern systems provide 3 different temperatures of water. One for general use, one that's used for cooking, and another that's, one and another for heating. And a newer system would create ways to deliver the temperature at the needed temperature, and save, again, to be more efficient. Okay, and then the last item on this list, if we go to the plans now, the yellow again is existing. That's the second floor, first floor. Very simply, to move the 3 classrooms that are in the basement out, we would propose an addition at this end of the building. And so we get back to option 1, and this is the cost. When you add up the costs from the sheets that we just reviewed, including both renovations and new construction, the total cost, if we were to do everything, would be just under $29 million. The aid, you can see, is $23,651, local share $5.3 million, and the aid percentage is 82%. That means 82% of the total cost would be paid for by state building aid, and it would be paid over the life of the amortization. So that's option 1, costs. And when I say this cost, by the way, is principal only. There's going to be interest costs as well, but both principal and interest are aided, and would be aided at 82%. If we do everything on this list, remember that for just a minute. Okay. I wanted to take you through something too. And this is the other thing. This relates to this slide. Take a look at this. This is the detailed breakdown of the aid calculation. And I don't think it's necessary that we go over every one of these, but I would like to go over just the first option so you understand how we got here. When the State Education Department calculates aid, there's 4 categories of building aid. There's 2 main categories. There's reconstruction and then new construction additions. So reconstruction means renovations to the existing facilities. And under reconstruction, as you can see here, for each of the schools, Rouse's Point, we show $3.294 million in reconstruction, renovation work. The maximum cost allowance, based on the number of classrooms and aidable spaces in that existing building, is $2.2 million. So it's about $1 million less than what the actual amount of money you need to spend on it is. So the state aid would be calculated at 95%, which is your aid ratio, times the lesser of those two numbers. In this case, it's the maximum cost allowance is smaller than the actual cost. So your aid is 2.1 million on the renovation work at Rouse's Point. If you fall down below that to Moore's, we're estimating 5.8 million in reconstruction costs. 4.7 million is the cost allowance. So there we're over the cost allowance by about $1 million. And the state aid, again, based on 95% of the lesser of those two numbers, is 4.5 million. Going down further, and we haven't reviewed this yet, but we'll in a minute, the middle high school renovations, if everything that's been identified were to be done, you're looking at 15 million worth of reconstruction. In this case, the maximum cost allowance is actually larger than the amount of work you need to do, which is a good thing. So the aid, you'll get your full 95% on everything that needs to be done at the middle high school. Everybody follow that on the committee? Okay. Moving over to the next column. Yeah, and Bob had just said that we need to explain, that I should explain that this is based on, the other criteria is the population, your enrollment. And when you calculate the maximum cost allowance in an existing school, it's going to be based upon the number of classrooms that you have and the number of eatable spaces that exist. When you calculate it in the next column based upon new construction, you have to add together existing classrooms and any new classrooms. And the total needs to be close to what your functional capacity is based on the enrollments. Bob mentioned with the new enrollment projections, we're looking at about 11% decrease in over the 5 years. And in elementary, the state allows you to project out 5 years. I looked at that briefly, and what I discovered was that even though the number comes down, it still means that you still have to have 3 deep and 2 deep if you stay with this option. You don't decrease enough to go to a 4 deep scenario. If it was determined that you had a big bubble in one classroom or something, and you could do maybe 3 groups in one and 2 in another, perhaps. But to provide the flexibility for anything that you have, I'm still going to recommend that you, in this case, go with either a 3 deep at Moore's and a 2 deep at Rouse's Point. And if you cut less than that, it's really going to impact your flexibility for the future. So going through with this scheme, this option, if you look at the new construction at Rouse's Point, the cost of new construction is $3.8 million. The maximum cost allowance for that addition is quite a bit less. It's $1.9 million. So you're only going to get aid of about $1.8 million. And then if you further go across then and you add both the reconstruction and new construction, you'll see that at Rouse's Point, for about $7 million worth of work, you're generating $3.9 million in aid. So clearly, when you do an addition there, it's not going to generate enough aid to pay for it. But then you go down further, and you'll see that the aid scenario gets much better at Moore's, and even better still at the high school. So that when you total everything up, you get these numbers. Even though Rouse's Point is only aidable at about 55%, because the high school is aidable at 95%, it averages out to be a total of 82%. Everybody follow that? Okay, that's option 1. We can go quicker to option 2. Option 2 closes Rouse's Point and creates a larger addition at Moore's to house grades K through 5 in a 5 deep school. Okay, now I'd like to go back to this handout, the last page of the addition of the renovation estimate, and just go over some of the renovation work that we've identified here. Carpeting, primarily in the middle school. Again, heating and ventilating system. Replacement, not complete. The boilers are relatively new. This is ductwork and also providing unit vent for ventilation in the classrooms. We're on this page here. This is the last one. The title says Northeastern Clinton Central School Additions and Alterations, Middle High School. Okay. Third item was, again, new emergency lighting. In the middle school gymnasium, the wooden gym bleachers do not meet current requirements, so we would recommend replacing them. And then providing bleachers that meet both accessibility guidelines as well as OSHA guidelines. A new fire alarm system. And then the next two items we need to do more work on in terms of design, and those numbers could change, but that's our best guess right now, but we need more work. In any case, there is work required in replacing sidewalks and in redesigning the traffic flow and parking at this site. That will also vary depending upon which option you go with. If you were to build an addition for an elementary school, for example, that would be one site design. If you weren't to do that and say go with option 1 or option 4, then or 2, then that would be another circumstance in terms of the design. But what we want to accomplish here in the traffic flow is that we create a separate place for parents to drop off and pick up. It's separate from bus drop off and pick up. Right now it's in the same location and it's not a safe situation. So one thought was that perhaps we could create a parent pick up and drop off point near the back of the school someplace. The other thing is looking at student parking and trying to provide student parking such that kids wouldn't have to traverse through any vehicular traffic, especially bus traffic. Currently, they have to do that. They have to walk through bus traffic. That's going to take some more work, but this is a placeholder basically for that work. Under infrastructure, again, the roofing here is 1980s vintage. At the middle school, it's a little newer at the high school. This number replaces all of it. We may want to take a look at just doing the middle school and waiting in the high school for another 5 to 10 years. There's some masonry repair, but there's also some metal siding repair. What's happening in the metal siding in the high school is that the fasteners are starting to rust. So we're going to propose that those fasteners be removed, the rust removed, and then some new fasteners, perhaps stainless steel or aluminum or something that wouldn't rust, that they'd be replaced to prolong the life of that siding. Ceilings in the middle school locker rooms. Bathrooms at the high school. Currently, one of the sets of bathrooms is closed. It's being used for storage. We're suggesting that be reopened so that there are more toilet facilities for the high school, and they need to be renovated before they get reopened. Telephones, and these are building-wide, both middle school and high school combined. So telephone, clocks, lighting in the middle school classrooms. The lighting in the high school classrooms is fine. With the middle school classrooms, again, is the older lighting. There is an underground oil tank at the middle school that we're suggesting be removed and not replaced if you bring gas service to the site. The utility company has said that they would bring service to the road anyway at their cost. We would have to pay for bringing it from the road into the school. The advantage of having gas is that we can, I think, save some money because the gas-fired systems are more efficient than oil-fired systems. It also provides you with a dual fuel opportunity that if you were using gas and the price of gas went higher than oil, you could switch to oil. And if you remove the oil tank and don't replace it, then you have two options. You could replace it with a smaller tank, or you could, in the case of going to oil, you could bring a tanker and park it there temporarily until you could install a new oil tank. So at the high school, the tank monitoring system needs to be replaced. Temperature control systems, Relatively minor item, but it's been being done a little at a time, and if we could add the software, we would be in pretty good shape with the temperature control system. The pool ventilation unit requires replacement. The next item is a relatively large item, $870,000, and that is that the ductwork in the high school is all fiberglass. It's not metal duct, it's fiberglass duct. And in several places it's been opened up, damaged, and it was a popular system back when this building was constructed. This number replaces that with sheet metal ductwork and replaces the variable speed drives, or installs or provides variable speed drives for that system. One of the things that we may want to do, instead of replacing it all, is just replace it where we're doing major renovation work in the building. And so at a minimum, we want to do that. That would be one way of cutting the cost. And then going in and perhaps repairing some of the existing ductwork and just doing the variable speed drives. The welding exhaust system in the shop doesn't meet current OSHA requirements. So we're looking at replacing that. In the middle school and high school boiler rooms, if we do bring gas to the site, then we would need to change the burners so that they could be dual fuel, both gas or oil. Currently, they're just oil. The next item is, in my opinion, a higher priority item, and that is that the windows and the actual metal panels in the middle school, they're kind of a reddish maroon color, should be replaced, and new energy efficient windows and insulated panels installed. And along with that, put in the unit vents. So the new unit vents, like you have in the new core classroom addition at the end, we do the same kind of thing with the vertical unit vents. They've been proven to be very reliable and very efficient here in this school. We'd like to put the same kind of system in the rest of the middle school classrooms. The natural gas piping, again from the road into the building and then throughout the building as required to get to the boilers. The sewage pumps require replacing. And then again, water, galvanized water piping and the hot water system needs to be upgraded. Okay, there's some program needs. Those were all infrastructure and health and safety type needs. Again, some of those are higher priority than others. These costs reflect doing all of this. One of the next steps is going to be really drilling down and saying, okay, which ones are really important to do and which ones could wait. And that's really the next step. I wanted to show worst case scenario. Program needs include a rearrangement of the office areas for both middle school and high school and the district offices. Starting with the high school. When you walk into the high school main entrance right now, there's no way for someone in the office to see who's coming in the door. It's a safety issue. There's a room right between the main office and the entrance that could be used to create a vestibule and a sliding window if we slide the office toward the entrance. So that's what we're suggesting we do there. At the middle school, then, we would move the middle school office so that it's adjacent to the entrance of the middle school, same thing. And then put the guidance where the district office is now, so that would be right adjacent to the middle school office, and move the district office to where the middle school office is. So it's a rearrangement of those spaces. They need renovation work anyway, so we're not just renovating to move them around. They'd have to be renovated anyway. But because they have to be renovated, there's a better arrangement of them, so we're suggesting that they be moved. And that's clearer in the plan when we get to it. If air conditioning was something that you wanted in middle school, it is available at the high school, it's not in middle school, that could be provided as well. And that's one of those things that wouldn't be, in my opinion, a priority 1 item, but perhaps a priority 2 or 3. The art rooms currently are 3 rooms that have partial walls between them. And there was a request that those extended so that it creates 3 separate rooms. That's what this next item was. The next piece was that there's a need for a large testing space in the high school. We have some ideas about how we might move some spaces that are currently in the high school to the middle school that may provide enough space to create a larger testing area. And I'll share that with you in a few minutes. And it involves moving the middle school home and careers, which is now in high school, to the middle school. And it involves moving 2 middle school science labs that are now in the science lab in the high school to the middle school. So how are we going to do that? Well, the idea is to move Jim's office and his maintenance storage areas that are now in the middle school wing to the high school. Some of the storage area won't be needed because we'll use the 2, perhaps if we go with the option 1, 2 or 4, we could use basements for storage in the other schools. And then where Jim is located, we would put middle school science there. And we think that because there's an enrollment decrease, that we could also use one of the middle school classrooms for home careers. And by then freeing up essentially 3 or 4 classrooms in this area, in addition, another classroom is being used for storage now, we may be able to create a space for that large testing. Okay. Option 2, then, again, this will look familiar from last time. This is more, it's a large addition across the back. We walked the site since our last meeting, and one of the problems with this is that when we move this, create a new bus turnaround here, this area of the site is wet. From here around where the field is, seems to be pretty well drained, and there's some drainage, I think, going through the field, but this area is wet, so that would create perhaps a bit of an environmental issue. And it also means that the existing garage that's there either needs to be removed or moved. But this does provide the needed space, and maybe there's another design that would work better. It provides additional classrooms to support another 12 classrooms for a total of a 5-week school. And I realized when I got here tonight that we have another plan that shows that second gym. This will require another gymnasium. The cost estimate reflects it, but this is the old plan I showed last week. What happens with the new plan is that another gym goes here and this just shifts up a little bit. Here's the costs. A total of $33 million. Now this, again, includes the middle high school renovations and the renovations to boards as well as the new construction boards. The A scenario is not as good as option 1. It produces about $23 million in aid, so the local share is $9.6 million. It results in an aid percentage of 71%. Second page of the other handout shows the detail for this cost information. And I don't think I need to review this in detail. You can take a look at that. That's your pleasure. Option 3A involves renovations, again, to the middle high school, and then a new standalone elementary school, 5D, for grades K through 5, at the high school site in this location. Here's the current high school. This is Prospect Street. This will be a new entrance. Parent drop-off here, bus drop-off here. 4 facilities in the middle. A primary wing and intermediate wing. About 80,000 square foot facility, new construction. Cost for this option is the highest cost of all of the options, $41 million. The aid is about the same as what it would be for the other schools. And again, that's because we can only provide aid for a certain number of students. And if you think about it, the reason this is more is, no pun intended, because we're losing more. And we're having to recreate it. We're losing Rouse's Point and having to recreate it. So we're building new construction for 6 times 5, 30 classrooms. Whereas in the earlier scheme at Moore's, we were building new construction for only 12 classrooms. In the scheme for Rouse's, we were building new construction for 6 classrooms. So the more new construction you have, obviously the more expensive it's going to be. The renovation work remains constant at the high school. In this case, we don't have to renovate Rouse's Point and Moore's, but the cost of new construction is greater than the renovation work. So this is probably the least favorable scenario in terms of total cost and aid percentage. So the local share here would be 17 million, the aid would be 23, and the local percentage 57. Right, and Bob brought up a good point that this one, as well as option 2, exceed the debt limit. You're going to see that all of the options, with the exception of option 1, exceed the debt limit. Some of them, like option 2, if we back up, we could probably get below the debt limit here. The aid scenario wouldn't be much better, but we could get below the debt limit by just reducing the amount of renovation work that we did at this school, perhaps at Rouse's and Moore's. But again, to compare apples to apples, all of these schemes show doing all of the renovation work that was required, or that was identified. Okay, 3B, again, at this site, closes Rouse's, closes Moore's, and instead of putting a standalone elementary school, it now puts an addition to the middle school for an elementary school. Again, for 5D. Okay, so this is the plan, and as I mentioned the last time, instead of building an entire new elementary school, we're renovating some of the existing space, which does help a little bit on the aid. And then this is now middle school, so we would build a middle school wing here to make up the difference here, and then this is elementary. This option would also require that we remove the existing bus transportation facility and probably locate that down where we show the new elementary school. While we were here, we did meet with Cliff and got the requirements for a transportation facility. We did not have the time since last week when we met to really do a design for that. It's something that we may want to look at if this option is selected. My guess is that you may not select this when you see the cost stuff, so I didn't want to spend the time designing the bus facility. Anyway, new elementary school, main entrance, one wing for primary, another wing for intermediate. Both of those are 2 stories. It'd be a 2-station gymnasium and cafeteria. And then the middle school would be here, green area. The high school would stay here. When we look at how we would reorganize these office areas, this would be the new district office. That would be where the middle school office would be, and next to it would be the guidance. Okay? So this would stay, I did that wrong, sorry. District office, middle school office, guidance. So this would be the main entrance to the middle school and the district offices. This would still be the main entrance to the high school. And this is the area where I talked about renovating that space for the high school office so that you could have visibility right into the vestibule area of the entrance. So that's a security issue, one that we've been doing a lot of this type of work all over the state to improve security at main entrances. Okay. Here's the cost. You'll see that the total cost is slightly lower than the cost of a standalone elementary school. Still well in excess of your debt limit. So just under 40 million. The aid is about the same. Again, same number of students, same aid scenario. And the aid percentage is slightly better than a new standalone at 59%. Okay, the fourth option is to keep, again, do the renovations to the middle high school, but no additions. Renovations and a small addition to Moore's, similar to what we showed in option 1. We do renovations to Rouse's Point, but no addition. And that stays as a 1-deep, that would become a 1-deep school. And then renovations to, and in addition to Champlain, which would have to be a 2-deep school. And the reason, and then what you end up with in this scenario is really space for If it were all one school, it'd be space for a six-deep scenario. What we would have is, we talked with Cliff about the number of students that currently get bused from Champlain to Rouse's or from Champlain to Moore's. And the total is about 180 students. So 100 of those students currently go to Rouse's Point. If they stayed at Champlain, then Rouse's Point would be reduced to a one-deep school. If the kids that are going from Champlain to Moore's were then to come out of Moore's and go to Champlain, then Moore's would be reduced to about a 2.5 deep school. Champlain would be about a 1.5 deep school. You can't have 1.5 deep worth of classrooms. You need 2 deep, because otherwise you wouldn't have the same number of classes for each grade level, same as Moore's. Okay. Here's the plan for Champlain. This also eliminates the classrooms in the basement. And Champlain is a 2-story building, as you know. There's the gymnasium that's also used for cafeteria and auditorium. Classrooms around the perimeter. And right now, this is closed up, the front entrance. We would suggest that we reopen that and put it back to the way it was. Although it could stay as a small room. In any case, it's not large enough for a classroom. But we look at a 2-classroom addition, keeping the primary level grades on the first floor. And if you count these, you'll see there's 6 regular classrooms and 2 special eds, 1 on each floor, 1 for primary, 1 for intermediate. And then the second floor would be the intermediate level grades, 3 through 5. That's an art music room. And so that would be similar to Rouse's in the scenario of option 1, cafeteria. So this would stay as a gym, auditorium, and then a new cafeteria here. The library, I believe, is right there. It's called Media Center, but that would be a library. Again, similar to Rouse's Point, we put it on the second floor of the school. Okay, got one more sheet to review in the handout, and that is the renovation work at Champlain. I believe it was the second page in this handout. Similar types of things you're going to find that are required at Champlain. There's carpeting that needs to be replaced. It's not throughout, but in some areas. While you have new boilers, we still have the old galvanized heating piping and no ventilation. So we would be looking at heating and ventilation systems upgrades. This next number is also an estimate, or I'll say guesstimate this time. It's going to take more study if you decide to further pursue this option. But there is some mold in the lower levels. And it's being created for the same reasons that they have at Rouse's. There's water infiltration into the basement, and it happens on a year-round basis, and it comes in primarily in this area right here from the parking area. That room in the basement is wet right now, and there's mold down in the boiler room that needs to be taken care of, and there's some in the corridors and some of the classrooms in the basement area. And then, so that when you remediate the mold, you also have to just deal with repairing the finishes. Accessibility, same type of work that would be required at Rouse's Point is required here. An elevator, making one of the entrances accessible, at least one, and making the bathrooms accessible. New emergency lighting and new fire alarm system. Under infrastructure, roofing, the masonry at this school is quite a bit worse than at Rouse's. It's not as bad as Moore's, but about half of the parapet needs to be rebuilt, taken down and rebuilt. And then there are several areas where both stone and brick joints need to be tuck pointed, or break down and tuck pointed. The next item was not a high priority, but again, if we go back to making the original entrance an entrance, then we'd have to put doors back in there. Right now it's been sealed off with windows, and it was used most recently as an office. new telephone clock systems. The telephone system, by the way, is combined with PA, so that is a safety issue. The PA systems are really antiquated in essentially all the schools. So when we replace the PAs, we can provide that as part of the telephone system. Some of the classroom lighting is old and again, pretty energy inefficient, so we put that on a high priority. And then perimeter foundation drains, similar to what we mentioned at Rouse's, around the existing building. The new building wouldn't need them because there would be no basement under the new building, that would be slab, but the existing one to keep the water out of the basement. Windows, and then again the domestic water system, the hot water system, piping and storage capability. If we were to do an addition like this, then there would be some spaces that would be renovated, for example, the library and the existing office area. We took a similar approach to this addition as we did at Rouse's, that we would provide a new entrance here. You can see the overhead view. The current bus drop-off could pretty much remain the same. They could drop off, come around and go back out. That could be a new main entrance at grade, so it would be handicap accessible, and then provide a way to ramp up, to the floor level. The overall cost of renovations at Champlain is $3.9 million. It generates about $1.9 million in aid, so about $2 million of it would be non-aidable. The new construction is not on your list here, but the new construction here is $5.3 million, and about half of that is aidable. Okay, this is the cost for option 4. Total cost, $33 million. 2 reasons. There's more renovation work here than what's required at Rouse's, and the addition needs to be larger than at Rouse's in order to get the same number of 2D classrooms. The aid, about the same. The local share at $9 million, the aid percentage, 73%. The last slide is a comparison of the 4 or 5 options. So just to recap, option 1 was keeping the configuration exactly the way you have it now. Rouse's Point and Moore stays open. You do the renovations to the high school, middle school. Total cost, the only one that's actually under your cost allowance. And we didn't fudge that, by the way. It's the way it worked out. The aid percentage is 82%. From a cost standpoint, option 4 would be the second best choice. Actually, it's a kind of a tie between 2 and 4. So 2 is closing Rouse's and keeping Moore's open with a large addition. The total goes over the debt limit, but the aid is quite a bit less than option 1. Option 4, same thing. The total's over the debt limit, but the aid's less by about 9%. And then both of the number 3 options, which bring a 5 deep elementary school to this site, whether you do it as an addition or standalone, neither of them is really cost effective. Both generate 58 to 59%, and both of them are quite a bit, 10 to 12 million over your debt limit. Okay. Any questions from committee members on this information? It's a lot to absorb. But this slide was, strictly from a cost standpoint, pretty telling. It pretty clearly points out that would be the most cost-effective option. I would say to you, in conclusion, that 1, 2, or 4, by reducing the amount of renovation work, especially in case of 2 and 4, we could bring them within your debt limit. But the relative aid scenarios would be about the same. That this option is always going to be better from an aid standpoint than 2 or 4 would be. Well, yeah, and Bob's question was, if we were to reduce the amount of renovation work here, could we get closer to the 95% aid, or say 90%? Your maximum aid was 95%. If you didn't have to do any new construction, and you did the renovation work at each of the schools that didn't exceed your maximum cost allowance, so in the case of the Rouse's Point and Moore, you only did about half the renovation work that we've identified, then you could get a full 95% aid. And that may be one approach. You may want to say, the board may want to say, let's just do what we can do up to the maximum cost allowance at each school. And that would mean coming back with another project in 5 years to do the rest of it, again, for the maximum cost allowance. It's going to cost more down the road. You may not have your full 95% down the road, you don't know, but you're not going to get any aid now. So you have to wait, you're going to have to weigh that. The new construction that would be required for option one, if we go back to that here at Rouse's Point, I think we designed this to meet what we felt were the best program requirements, such as a new entrance here, the main office and nurse's office near the main entrance for safety reasons. We could look at a scenario that makes both of these classrooms, and that would increase the amount of aid for the addition. However, it decreases the amount of aid for the renovation work. So it really doesn't matter. Follow me? If we put 2 classrooms in here, but took 2 classrooms away from here, we would just be robbing Peter to pay Paul, so it would be the same. The aid wouldn't really improve overall. The bottom line is that to do a new addition here, which is the smallest of the additions of all the options, you're just not going to get it fully aided, and you're just going to have to bite the bullet for it if you decide to go this route. But we could reduce the amount of renovation work at the high school, at Rouse's, at Moore's, to bring the total overall cost down and also improve the aidability. We're not going to get all the way to 95, we might get it to 90. We might get it to somewhere between 85 and 90. Last thing I've got to say tonight is that these are still preliminary, but they're our best estimate at this point. And they are good for what your charge is, and that is to either recommend or narrow down the number of options, because they do compare apples to apples. Once an option is decided upon, then we need to really do more work. To really, as I said earlier, really take a look at more final design. Perhaps there is another option that's more efficient than this, for example. Meet with staff here. We haven't met with principals. We did meet with middle and high school principal, but we haven't met with elementary principals. And try to maximize the aid, and increase the aidability as much as we can. And that would happen between the 5th and whenever, if the board decides to go forward, whenever the vote date would be. And we would continue to report on that. And the other thing that we don't have right now is what the tax impact would be for any of these scenarios. Obviously, the tax impact is less for option one and more for the others. And you see it as based on a percentage of aid and what the local share is. So one of the other pieces that's really going to be important is to figure out what the tax impact will be. And we're going to require the assistance of your fiscal advisor for that.
I think, I know that Bill and I, we received some of this information earlier today, and we took a look at, when we were first talking about this, we were talking about getting 95% aid on the total project, on maybe a $30 million project. And I think we're looking at, not wrong, $155,000 a year. That would be the cost. I'm sorry. I said what we were looking at, once we had calculated this around 95%, that it was going to be more like $135,000 that would be added to the budget. I asked Bill to try to do some preliminary work today using the 82% figure, and maybe would like to comment a little bit on that, Bill?
I believe that the number would be closer to about 330,000 additional a year with these new percentages. And that's a substantial increase over what we were thinking the last time we met.
And that's why what I asked Randy is we can look at, you know, that scenario, again, whatever the committee chooses to go with for a scenario is try to maximize and raise that level of aid. I don't think we would get it. I think 82 is too low. I mean, we wanted 95 when we first started. I don't know if, you know, if whatever the committee decides, if they can settle on something less than 95, maybe around 90 or so, I don't know. But this does definitely cast a different glow on the whole thing. I think we have most of the information that we need. I would like to, on the 5th, because we had told the board that it's on the agenda, that we at least present this information so that they also get to hear what all the scenarios are and what the cost is. And then my goal would be that when we go back in October, that the committee would maybe have decided on a scenario, et cetera, that they want to present, because the board does want the committee to make a recommendation. They did express that to me. And as I said from the beginning, the committee needs to make a recommendation that they can support, because they're the ones that are going to be selling. You know, I personally won't be taking part in the decision. The board members won't. It's going to be the committee that's going to recommend the option that they feel, if any option. Meanwhile, if there's something that you would like to have Randy, I know Randy's planning on coming on the 5th also to do this presentation, but if there's something that somebody wants to let Randy know they would like to have him try to maximize or look at, we can probably ask him to do that, at least for October. Is there anybody who would like to?
I had toured the schools again yesterday, and one thing I was wondering is, the renovations and everything to Moore's, does that include an impact study on the septic system?
Yes, thank you. That's going to be required. We feel that it needs to be done regardless of which option you go with, but certainly would be a much bigger impact on the existing septic system if we went with the option of locating all of the elementary students there. But yes, that needs to be studied. I didn't mention also, these costs, we're carrying a 10% contingency for things that at this early stage we may not know about. And that's pretty typical. So we could afford some other scopes given that we're carrying that contingency.
Because I didn't see anything about the
But you're right.
septic on the board's list
As part of the
plumbing.
plumbing, we need, but there's not enough being carried right now for septic that needs to be studied. It's one of the things that has to be done as part of the final design.
And that would be whatever option we would do, because we
It
do.
would be whatever.
That was a big concern for Moore's elementary.
Yes. That work would be aidable, by the way, because site work, it's considered part of the building system, you know, on the site, it's considered part of the building system.
Go ahead.
Just a question for Randy. You talked about, getting the cost down and whatnot. What would the advantage be to getting the cost down for renovations at the middle school for getting the full 95%?
The only advantage there would be to reduce the overall cost of the project. It wouldn't help you from an aid standpoint. What would help from an aid standpoint would be to reduce the amount of renovation work at Moore's and houses to get that below maximum cost.
We should probably do everything we can at the middle and high school. If we're getting the 95%, I think now would be the time.
I would agree with that approach as long as you're able to stay underneath your debt limit. And the other information that's missing from this is that for transportation, if you keep the existing maintenance facility, the existing transportation facility, then there is some work that is required. The roof needs to be replaced. That was on building conditions and a couple other minor things. There is also would be an option of keeping that building to use for maintenance and grounds storage, which is now spread out here around the district. and either adding on or building a new bus facility. That obviously is more money. I don't know how much more because we haven't designed it, but it's other information. So to answer your question about Middle High School, if the board decided they wanted to look at either addition or new construction for transportation facilities, then you may want to look at decreasing the amount of information over here so that we could keep the total amount within 20 million. That's other information and other information that we need to gather and present to this meeting report. We won't have it by the 5th, but we will have it by the next time we meet. If we meet again, say
I would like to meet in mid-September, if that's okay, before the October board meeting, and I can get up and
the transportation work, well, it impacts the overall. It doesn't really affect the decision on either of these options because it's kind of a standalone piece. Whatever.
More speedy.
Right.
That still doesn't solve the problem. Let's have a scenario where we drop down to 30 students in intermediate in Rouse's Point. And there's only 18 of these graded in Morris. In reality, most likely the board members will have to look at busing compared to the cost of teachers and everything else. So that doesn't solve anything, the so-called flex zone we have in Champlain, because the school would close. We still would have that, even though it's there, there's still going to have to be a decision made by the board for the taxpayers and the parents each year, even though there's a nice
unless the, board would decide, because now we've had what we call the flex zone for 2 or 3 years, we may decide to say, okay, Champlain is part of the NCCS district, and maybe make a line and say, all these students here would now go to the board. I don't know, there's different ways of looking at it, but I do understand what you're saying. But
no matter how you look at it, you may have to bus kids if you have only 2 buildings.
If you're seeking efficiency.
yes, if you're seeking efficiency, but if on the other hand, you're making a commitment that you stay 2 and 3 deep, then you should be able to handle everything that comes along in the future. And basically, with the enrollment projection that we see going down, I know when we first started talking about this, we wanted to make sure that we would have enough capacity. So if we did go with a 2 and a 3D, now with the enrollment projection to go down, I think we would have all the space that we would ever need in the future.
And on that Rouse's Point plan, the one you're adding on, you said there are options, like you had in the back where the office was, which it's going to be, and so on.
Yes.
Wouldn't it make more sense to have nice classrooms back there and just fix up the office? Wouldn't that also be for security-wise, that you could sort of lock those doors on the outside and so on? The other thing too was, I talked to you before about the possibility, and you said it's still a possibility of gym in the cafeteria.
Yeah. And we looked at that, and that's something we can certainly pursue further. It's going to decrease the ability of that scheme because the gym would be larger than the cafeteria. We did, though, take a look at the existing gym. And while the floor is handed strictly finished, structurally it's pretty sound. There's some safety improvements that could be made. And one of the things is that the heating units that are now around the perimeter of the gymnasium, along with the heating work that we're recommending, we would take those out and we would put in just floor grills or some overhead. So that those would be taken off the walls and put back some safety padding around the perimeter.
You've got a beautiful window in there.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise I think that there's also a nice stage as well. Yes, if we're using the cafeteria, it could be kept quiet and you could use the gym. And if that's something you want us to look at as an option, we certainly can. I know without even looking at it, it's going to be more money, so you're going to be going the other way from a cost standpoint. But there may be programmatic reasons why you would rather do that.
But you could get a safer situation for the kids in the front part. Look like it's a take away some of the dangers, right?
Right.
And the only reason I was in a classroom, and just for me, they look bigger because of squareness and so on. If they were in the back, then they are the long rectangular,
Bigger, because they're built to state at minimum sizes in the addition. Classrooms in the existing building are small.
so we've got two better,
That's
two
true.
bigger classrooms.
You're right. We looked at it from more of a safe, thinking that to get the entrance accessible and have it be the main entrance, and we want to put the office next to the main entrance for safety. We could keep the main entrance somewhere else, keep the office where it is, and keep those, just classrooms and have an emergency exit out the back. If that's possible. So, I think that part of what the next step would be, if an option is selected, that we would look at different alternative designs for both the addition and the existing building. And that just needs more time and more work. This was done really for the purposes of comparing these five options. There's really a lot of design involved. It's very conceptual, very diagrammatic. Even the shape of those classrooms doesn't mean necessarily square classrooms to create a diagram. They could be, in fact, I think there's some studies about the classroom is about 1.5 times long as it is deep is about ideal for shape. That also depends on the type of students, the size of the classroom, and so on. So,
What's the scale are you, we're going to talk about moving
they're
rooms around?
across the scale.
Pretty close.
Yep.
You answered one question, for example, we're pushing like September, October, I think it's too fast. So I'm not used to getting in that low like we're taking. I think it takes a lot of consideration.
Yep.
Also, we got errors, that comes into money. This hasn't got to be approved until June 2008.
Okay, let's talk.
Can you explain that part?
Yes. It's a good question. Talked about it last time, but I can see where it can be confusing. The deadline that we're talking about is June 30th, 2008. That's when the current legislation will expire. Current legislation is that we get 95% building needs. We don't know whether or not the legislature will re-up it for another 2 years or whatever. We don't know. They could, they may not. The deadline is that they have to have signed construction contracts by June 30th of 2008.
Repeat that
They have
part.
to have signed construction contracts by June 30th of 2008.
That's not what I got heard today.
Okay?
It doesn't have to go out. It has to be approved, but prior to the contract does not have to be let out by that date.
Where did you hear that, sir?
Pretty little, I talked to Betty, because she called me after you had talked to her, Jack, and basically, the plans have to be approved, but and I think that's what we were talking about. Yes,
It's almost, we're almost talking about the same thing. The plans, you have to have state ed approval of the final plans and specs. I still think it's signed construction contracts. I'm not going to say Betty's wrong, we can confirm that, but there's only about a 2-month difference in that date. So, and you don't want to approve plans at the end of June, sign construction contracts in August of 2008. You want to have construction contracts signed in the spring of 2008, so you can start construction in the summer. So, do that. Back up from that schedule. It takes about a year, say 10 months. Get back up from that schedule, say the June 08. Let's say that we want to have construction started on it. Okay, because when school stops, we want to start construction in order to really efficiently do the work. SED, you have about a 2-month period for bidding. So bidding, receiving bids, analyzing the bids, and awarding contracts takes 2 months. So from June back up to May, April. SED takes right now around 16 to 18 weeks to approve final drawings and specs. We'll back that up, and we're anticipating that that's going to lengthen. That's time because of the Excel aid that districts are getting, there's more activity, and there's going to be more plans and specs being submitted to SCD. So we're suggesting you figure about a 4-month period for SCD review. We back up from that as March, February, January, December. We need to submit final drawings and specs in December of 2007. Back up about 10 months from there, and that gets you January or February of 2007, when you have to have a vote. So what we talked about the last time is a vote in, I'd say at the latest, mid-February, the latest of the 7th. That means 45 days prior to your vote, the board has to adopt a resolution to go forward with the capital project. So in that scenario, you're looking at the board having to adopt a resolution by the end of December. And you're right, not a lot of time between now and then. But I think this is information that will help you to, make some decisions, at least from a cost standpoint. The other information you got to consider is what Bob presented earlier, with some of the operations costs and so on. Does that answer your question? When we come back next time, I'll lay out on paper that schedule. And it's hard to, think of it backing up, but if you start from now and go forward, to recap, you would have a board making a final decision in late December, a vote in mid-February, final drawings and specs submitted in, say, early December of 2007, State Ed Department approving it by April of 08, and receiving bids by June of 08. I'd rather receive bids earlier, and you can do that, but that would be worst case. And then construction would start in the summer of 08 and be completed in the fall of 09. So everything would be done by September of 2009. Any other questions?
Bob, or maybe Bill knows, you gave us a sheet at the beginning about saving money on teachers, but if we were on one campus or whatever, wouldn't there be a lot of other savings? Maybe secretaries, custodians, snow plowing, nurses?
Well,
I mean, it's hard to just base on like the 82 versus the 70, whatever, without.
but when you're looking at the difference, so, and we did look at that, but when you look at the difference between the 59 and the 82%, it's very, very significant. As Bill mentioned, just the fact that going from 95,000, which we figured would be around 135,000, down to an 82, which all of a sudden becomes around 315,000. If you drop that down to, in the 50s, I don't care how much you're going to save each year.
Well, I think there would be substantial savings. I mean, we handed a sheet up tonight that shows that we estimate about $400,000 savings when we close the Champlain plan. If we were to consolidate to one campus right now, I mean, just with the classes of the year we just ended, we would definitely save 2 teaching positions to start right off. That with fringe benefits could be anywhere from $130,000 to $140,000. We would have some savings in other specific areas, but they're not tangible right now, but you would probably have some larger phys ed class sizes or art classes or music where you would save some partial positions there. Currently, we have travel between schools. We have for specials or meetings for special ed. I think we spent about $5,000 a year for travel that we pay teachers and people to travel between schools. That's an example. We have savings because we have a mailman bringing stuff between schools that would not be there. Maintenance is traveling between schools. We probably have a savings because a brand new facility would probably not have a lot of maintenance for the first 10 years. If you revamp these schools, that'll basically do the same thing. But there would be substantial savings by consolidation. Whether it would be enough to offset the loss of the state aid, I can't tell you that tonight. If we did a strong analysis, we could come up with a better idea of the savings, but you really don't know until it happens. But that is an area that probably could be looked at more fully.
And then the other factor, though, you have to look at is if you have an increase in population, if something takes place too. So, you know, it's up there, it's tangible. That's why I did this, because I was asked to come up with a projected savings if there was going to be a savings. And I think, Tom, you made a good point too, even when you look at transportation, 169,000, you can say it at 90%. That's really kind of a moot point too, you know, so. I don't know.
It definitely gives you more flexibility to have a central campus.
But you weren't in 50% or 80 or 71% was option 2.
No, option two is more.
Option two is
More, just putting everybody in more.
Right.
Right, okay.
But you've already showed us the one building, there's $500,000 of savings right there. And there's gotta be a lot more. So even if the
Oh,
aid is
I see-
down,
I see that.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see where you're going.
You can say, well, you're gonna save $800,000.
No, I thought you were talking about option three. There's a difference, yes.
So, I mean, I think we need to know the numbers.
I think we're just talking about option two.
Yeah.
You have everybody under the same canvas, so if you did,
Option two is Moore's home, we're all following.
so if that was the case, then the scenario of the savings for the combined scenario would actually take effect, because then you would have.
Also, the transportation, you're talking about the teachers.
I'm just curious to know how
Save-
much,
save that.
about how much we're talking.
So there you'd be looking at.
I think it went down that way.
Savings almost $500,000.
Just in people.
Yeah.
Exactly, a lot of others.
On construction, is there any chance, let's say, one of these things you talk about timing, I don't know if it's possible, but is there any chance that some construction could be done after school hours?
We'd have to do that during the school year, we would do some second shift work, yes. We couldn't accomplish all the work in 2 summers. We would phase it in such a way that the work that really had to be done in the summer would be, and then there would be second shift work for the school year. We'd also take advantage of school vacations to work, probably 2 shifts. The other thing that I would say is that there's some work, such as replacing the roof at Rouse's Point, if you would go to that, that we would look to get done in the summer of 07. So we really just crank out the drawings to replace that roof, we get it replaced for the summer, and then the maintenance will start to go on. And just split that out as a separate project, because it's leaking pretty bad. There may be a few other things like that, but the majority of the work still, they just don't know leak. You have to vote in January, February of 07. Be tight, but we would want to expedite the work to make that roof done so that that could be accomplished.
Any other questions? If not, I would like to, if we could possibly meet maybe those that can around maybe 5:30 or the board meeting is at 6:30, so 5:30, so we can decide on the presentation, what we want to do to explain. Is that okay? Those of you who want to, on the 5th. That's our next meeting, because we're going to be presenting to the board. I would like that committee to be there for that.
So on the fifth, we're basically doing the same presentation again, right?
But
But all the options.
Right, all the
See what
options.
we can do.
Right, what I would like is maybe a couple of committee members can explain the process that we've gone through, you know, so as a prelude to Randy doing this presentation. Okay? Yeah, Randy will be there.
I thought, I think as I understand, Mr. present the same thing that we just did.
Are you telling us that you want us to make a decision by September the 5th?
No, I'm saying that I would like you to be, because we're going to present this information to the board. Our board meeting is September 5th.
Everything.
So I just think it'd be nice if the committee could be there and we could,
If I may, maybe what you might do is think about what additional information you would like in order for you, from us, in order to make your, make a decision. And I think the board's going to probably have some ideas on that as well.
right. But the basic thing is not to make a recommendation or anything, it's just to present the board with the same information so they can be processing it. And hopefully we'll have a meeting in mid-September, and then we can see if we can work out, an option that we would like to present to the board. And hopefully at the October board meeting, we can make a presentation, of at least letting them know what options. So. Okay, well, thank you very much. We're just going to take a few minutes here, we'll just complete this meeting, and then after that, if you have some questions, like I said, for Andy, myself, or